Greeting and welcome to the Muslim Scholars Perspective on Human Rights program. My name is Zainab Malakuti and I'm an assistant professor of human rights. Today my guest is Dr. Mousavi and we are going to delve into one of the most challenging issues, the status of women in Islam. Our aim is to analyze whether Islam respects and protects women's rights. Dr. Mousavi, due to her passion for this subject, has dedicated about 10 years to conducting research in Islamic studies. So, the issue of women's rights in Islam is complex. As a religion, Islam recognizes and emphasizes the equal worth and dignity of both men and women. However, in practice, various cultural, social, and historical factors have given rise to different interpretations and practices regarding women's rights. So, with Dr. Mousavi, we'll explore the status of women before and after Islam to see that what changes Islam brought in empowering women's rights. So, we'll seek to understand how Islam justifies the differences between men and women, such as the issue of polygamy and hijab. Thank you so much for being with me. Dr. Mousavi, welcome to the Muslim Scholars Perspective on Human Rights program, and thank you for accepting our invitation to participate in this program and explore the subject of women's in Islam. My first question to you is, what was the status of women before Islam, and actually what changes did Islam make in this regard?
To answer your question, I would like to make a comparison between the situation of women before and after the advent of Islam to show how Islam redefined everyday life of women in a society like Arabia. In fact, there are few examples of strong and independent women from privileged class of the society in big commercial cities, but numerous reports of women indicate having an inferior status for women in pre-Islamic Arabia. They were deprived of all their basic rights to choose their husband freely, to divorce if they were ill-treated, to inherit from their families, to own something, or even to live. We may have heard of the common custom of burying infant daughters alive, which was not only a common custom at that time, but also considered a virtuous deed and a generous act among Arabs before Islam. Actually, female infanticide was common at that time for two main reasons: fear of poverty and fear of disgrace. In pre-Islamic Arabia, women were considered nothing more than a financial burden to their families. Fathers were afraid that with the birth of a daughter, they would have a useless mouth to feed because men were the only source of strength because of their ability to fight and protect their clans. The second reason for infanticide was to avoid shame and disgrace. Uh, should their daughters be captured by enemy in war, which was a very common occurrence at that time. Regarding marriage, divorce, and family relations, in the tribal society, the tribe was the main entity and the focus of concern. So marrying women, for the most part, had the purpose of increasing the number of tribes, the members of the tribes, and in turn, its power. So the family was overshadowed by the tribe, and marriage was a very loose institution with no strict rules. Formation of marriage was either by agreement between the man and the woman's family, especially her father, or by capture in times of war, by purchase in which the woman's family gave her away for a price, which was also called dowry, or it was either by inheritance, whereby the heir of the deceased inherited his wife. In all of these forms of marriage, the consent and the will of the woman had no role to play. So was the divorce. To cancel the marriage and get the daughter back, the father had to return the dowry or purchase price. Otherwise, the wife or the daughter could not be free. Um, in pre-Islamic society, women were treated as commodities. They were denied all rights of ownership and inheritance. Rather, they were considered as objects of inheritance. In youth, they were the goods and chattels of their father. After marriage, the husband became their lord and master, and if he died, the woman was also the part of a husband's estate to be inherited to his relatives. It was within such a setting that the Prophet proclaimed the Islamic principle regarding the rights of women, which may appear to be accepted today, but at that time, 14 centuries ago, it was a revolutionary concept established by divine will. Islam improved the conditions of all women, regardless of which tribe they belong to. It actually shifted the focus from the tribe to the individual, and then family and community, and institute a system in which everyone was equal, regardless of their gender, race, age, or wealth. Under Islam, it was the moral and religious principles that defined women's rights, not their tribal affiliation.
Thank you so much. So you explained about the status of women before Islam. Now, could you explain to me that what are the teachings regarding women in Islam? In fact, how Islam portrays women in family and society?
According to Quran, women are equal to men in their creation, inherent spiritual and intellectual capabilities, and their obligations and duties towards Allah. The story of creation of Adam and Eve in Quran does not indicate or even imply any kind of discrimination. Rather, it emphasizes on the equality and common soul between men and women. Quran says, "إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَىٰ وَجَعَلْنَاكُم شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا." O mankind, we created you male and female, and appointed you races and tribes so that you may know one another. Surely the noblest among you is in the sight of God, is the most God-fearing among you. So the only basis for superiority, according to this verse of Quran, is being God conscious. Islam does not differentiate between the virtuous man and woman who possess the same qualities, and indicate that Allah's reward is in no way related to gender. It says, "من عمل صالحا من ذكر وأنثى وهو مؤمن فأولئك يدخلون الجنة يرزقون فيها بغير حساب." Male or female believers who commit good acts will certainly enter the garden of paradise, and they will be provided for without limits. Further, to highlight this equality and discard the belief regarding the inferior status of women in pre-Islam, in some verses, Quran intentionally repeats reference to both men and women, and emphasizes that the same standards apply to both genders. For example, it says Muslim men and Muslim women. It addresses faithful men and faithful women, obedient men and obedient women, men who fast and women who fast. When Quran is presenting examples of believers and non-believers for people, four women are set forth as examples: the wife of Noah and the wife of Lut as examples of disbelievers, and the wife of Pharaoh and Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus, peace be upon them, as examples or probably role models for believers. Quran admires Virgin Mary, peace be upon her, several times for her distinct spiritual status and coats her with noble attributes such as the one who is selected by God, in Allah hastafake, the one who is purified, وَتَحَرَكَ, or the righteous and sincerely devout. It says, مَا الْمَسِيحُ ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ وَأُمُّهُ صِدِّيقَةٌ, means righteous. All these verses show non-discriminatory view of Quran regarding women in their creation and spiritual capabilities.
Thank you so much. So my question is that actually, how does Islam view the institution of marriage and family, in particular comparing with the concept of marriage in pre-Islam era, which you explained?
Regarding marriage and family relations, in a Quranic family, the relationship between couples are based on mutual compassion and mercy. Quran says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. He placed between you affection and mercy. The couples are described as garments for each other in Quran. They protect and cover up each other's weaknesses and faults, and they are sources of comfort for each other. It says, هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. They are clothing for you, and you are clothing for them. In formation of marriage, in contrast to pre-Islamic society, the consent of women is a necessary condition. Even at the time of divorce, the dignity, respect, and financial stability of a woman should be maintained. And during marriage, a man has to pay the dowry as marriage gift to woman, not to her father like pre-Islamic society, and he has no right to get it back after marriage. He has to support his wife and provide her with the necessities of life to the best of his financial capacity. The woman in Islam has the right to ownership equal to men. She has the right to own and sell property, to inherit, to seek knowledge, and to engage in legitimate trade, while she is not required to contribute anything to maintain her home and family. She's also allowed to take part in social activities as long as her participation is consistent with chastity and virtues.
So, in fact, you believe that women are allowed to participate in social activities in Islam, while some believe that they are forced to stay at home.
If we look at Quran, in the picture that Quran portrays from a society, women are actively present. In many Quranic stories, their role is in no way limited to their home. For instance, in Surah Naml, chapter Naml, we read about a lady, Queen Belqais, who is the powerful and wise ruler of her time. Or in another chapter, Qisas, we read about another lady who is trying to influence the ruler's decision positively and to save the clan from the tyrant ruler of her time. As I mentioned, all these Islamic teachings become more interesting when we compare them with the situation of women before the advent of Islam, when none of these feminist movements or women's rights organizations or legislations were available.
Thank you so much. So far, you've discussed the equality between men and women in Islam. But it's known that there are still some differences in jurisprudential laws. What is your opinion on these differences? So I want to know, what do you think of polygamy, the issue of hijab, and other matters?
Yes, as you mentioned, there are some differences between men and women when it comes to some jurisprudential laws. We may spend hours talking about each and every cases of differences in jurisprudence. For example, the strict requirements that Islam posed on polygamy, which was a part of pre-Islamic Arab culture, or women's share of inheritance and the reasons and philosophy behind it, or the case of women's hijab and so on. But instead, I would like to uh, refer to some general points regarding these differences, which may help at least to understand them better. First, Islam is a system of rights and obligations. So we need to look at it as a system. We cannot take a single part out and then judge on the whole system based on that. All these parts, rights and obligations, interplay, and they make sense when we put them together. For example, in Islamic law, a husband is required to maintain his home and family, as I mentioned, while his wife is not required to contribute anything to it, even if she is a millionaire or the richest woman in the world. That is why the Islamic law of inheritance provides sons with double share than that of daughters. I think in many cases, these differences reflect the actual responsibilities and duties, not any sort of discrimination or inferiority or superiority of a particular gender. In Islam, some duties are considered to be the province of men, while others are the province of women. The second point that I would like to mention is that what we are talking about today is the status of women in Quran or in Islam. We are not talking about Muslim societies or the attitude of a group of Muslim towards women, because there might be great differences between the act of some Muslims and true teachings of Islam. We shouldn't regard any of cultural discrimination in Muslim society as Islamic. Only the one that is firmly based on teachings of the Holy Quran and the infallible Imams can provide a proper definition of women's role in Islam. The third point is that when we are talking about the status of women in Islam, there are three main sources that we need to examine: Quran, Hadith, or the narrations of the Holy Prophet and his infallible successors, and Sunnah, or the acts or the lifestyle of the Holy Prophet and his infallible successors. Of course, when we are referring to Hadith, we need to examine the authenticity of the narrators, the context of Hadith, whether it was limited to a special case or it was referring to a general attitude of the Holy Prophet or Islam and so on. However, more important than a few cases of ahadith, we have the Sunnah, or the lifestyle of the Prophet and his successors, and also the characters and the life of female personalities in the Prophet's household. Actually, women had very important role in religion of Islam. The generation of the Prophet of Islam can only continue through his daughters, Lady Fatima, peace be upon her, who is not only the Prophet's daughter but also the mother of his successors. Actually, she transferred the Prophet's legacy to his sons and all future generations. Another example is Lady Khadija, the wife of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon them, who was a woman who enterprised a business in the period that women were treated as objects or commodities. She challenged that institutions and was the wealthiest woman in the whole region at that time. And of course, she was possessing a high level of dignity, chastity, and moral characters, and she sacrificed and spent all her wealth to support the spiritual mission of Islam. The granddaughter of the Holy Prophet, Lady Zainab, peace be upon her, she was brought up under the direct care of the Holy Prophet. She's best known for her role after the Battle of Karbala in which her brothers, her family, and her son, and all the companions were martyred by the forces of Yazid. The women and children were taken captive as after the battle, and they were marched to Kufa and then Damascus, where Zainab, peace be upon her, gave a very eloquent speech. Actually, she condemned Yazid. She spread the message of his brother's movement in her magnificent speech. And actually, she altered all the evil plots of the tyrants of his time by her strength and steadfastness. Other women of the Prophet's family also represent the status of women and in its importance in Islamic thinking. Among them is Fatima Masumeh, peace be upon her, the daughter of the seventh Imam. Her shrine in Qom is the reason that this city exists as one of the main centers of Islamic educational institutions throughout history. I think all the claims and statements regarding inferiority of women in Islam by those who are not well informed fade as we see the lifestyle of the Holy Prophet and females in his household, like Lady Khadija, Lady Fatima, and Lady Zainab, peace be upon them, and how strong and brave and wise and noble they were, and at the same time modest. And we know that such characters in no way can be brought up and raised in a context in which women were not honored and respected at the highest level.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate the participation of Dr. Maryam Mousavi in this program, and like always, I hope you enjoy this episode. Stay safe and well until the next episode.